Howdy, howdy!
Top of the morning, afternoon, or evening, folks.
Welcome to But It Was Aliens, the paranormal comedy podcast where we probe paranormal activity to decide for the questionable benefit of humanity whether that activity really was paranormal. My name is Mr. Kev in the John, and alongside me with no idea what we will be covering today is Mr. Granville Moonwalker.
Have you noticed how whenever I'm tired, I seem to just get this weird sense of energy, like
As soon as we start,
I need to be energized.
Adrenaline kicks in. Today, we are heading to Toba Inlet,
I need a nap!
British Columbia, Canada, to visit an old friend. Toba Inlet, and indeed the Toba Valley, is a place called home to many a grizzly bear. The inlet is basically a deep ford surrounded by trees, mountains, and snow-capped peaks like Donkey Kong Country. The area was inhabited by indigenous people many, many generations before Spanish and British discovered and named the land in 1791. Common era. The area is one of total isolation.
Ooh. It's a very picturesque view you've given me here.
Yeah, beautiful looking place. Absolutely beautiful. You don't really see much of this in England. Perhaps in Wales, but not so much in England, local to us. We're more muddy farms, really. Muddy woodlands, muddy fields, muddy roads.
Trotters.
Mud.
Car's bloody muddy.
Mine too, actually. But let's not get sidetracked. Why is your car muddy? Our subject today...
Tractors on the road.
Tractors on the road. Oh. Our subject today was a Canadian lumberjack and prospector who went by the name of Albert Ostman, because that was his name. Ew. Toba Inlet has some major salmon runs alongside being a good trout, cod and other fish spot. There are also killer whales in the water.
Yeah.
There were rumours of an abandoned gold mine in the area too. In 1924, Albert went to Toba Inlet for a holiday. Albert was a hard-working, honourable and trustworthy man in his very early 30s, and Albert needed a break. Albert's buddies had warned Albert not to go to the inlet because despite its beauty and isolation, there were rumours of man-beasts who roamed the inlet. Albert was a tough guy and called bullshit on those rumours. Albert was pretty confident he could handle a grizzly, and to Albert, that was the biggest challenge he may encounter. Albert arrived and all was beautiful. Albert was having a lovely time. The first few nights, perfect. Albert had never slept better. Unusually though, each morning, Albert awoke to find that some kind of scavenger had been through Albert's campsite, taking any loose food. A few evenings in, Albert had a plan. Hey, boo-boo. Albert climbed into his sleeping bag, fully clothed, ready to jump out and confront his nighttime visitor. Albert, though, accidentally fell asleep. It wasn't long before something made a sound outside, stirring Albert from his sleep and releasing Albert's confidence from Albert's loins.
I would feel safe going somewhere where there was grizzly bears if I had a weapon, like
I wouldn't.
an automatic shotgun.
If I had a nuke, I still wouldn't feel safe, mainly because I'd probably I would blow myself up.
However, what year was this?
1924.
You're going to have to be a good shot with a standard shotgun.
Well, the idea is that you shoot them at point blank range, isn't it?
Yeah, but you've got to hope your gun doesn't jam. So
if you've got to get that close to a grizzly to unload, I'm not feeling particularly safe. I'm in punching distance. The grizzly's going to be like, kapow, mother trucker!
1924, I am not confident. Now, I would be.
See, now I wouldn't be. Then I also wouldn't be. I don't think I'd want to be in an isolated woodland area.
I'm not saying I want to be. I'm just saying that would make me feel comfortable.
Having a gun.
Yes.
Have you ever considered moving to America?
No. Because of guns.
I'm fine with a gun, but everyone else is the problem.
It's other people.
See, I'd only use it if I needed to. And if you just so happen to ram my car, I'd need to.
Yeah, exactly.
However, if I rammed someone else's car, they're getting carried away, aren't they?
So my first thought, whatever this was that was taking his
goodies. His goodies.
Food.
His goodies. Yes, his goodies. Albert Ostman is twerking it in his camp. Ew.
I thought maybe like a little bear cub.
Yeah.
Was just coming in, foraging, or like a little fox or something.
And Albert about to pounce on it.
But if what he saw made him release his confidence from his loins, then either Mama Bear turned up, or it ain't a bear.
It's man bear pig. Albert froze in his sleeping bag, trying not to make a sound so that Albert could hear everything, anything going on in the surrounding bush. Suddenly, something huge and hairy scooped Albert up still in his sleeping bag, and next thing Albert knew, he was being carried in the arms of something hairy across the inlet. Albert struggled, but was wrapped so tightly in the sleeping bag, Albert could barely move. Excuse the pun. Albert shouted and screamed, but nothing deterred Albert's abductor, who continued to make their way across the woodlands for approximately 3 hours. Albert was carried for 3 hours. That must take some strength. Eventually, Albert could see that he had arrived at a plateau, and here, Albert's captor dropped Albert on the ground.
Right. I've got a question. Also an observation. I'll start with the observation.
Aye.
At the start of the episode,
Yes.
you quoted honourable and trustworthy.
Did I?
You then mentioned that this, whatever this creature was large and hairy and carried him off.
Right.
Is this an excerpt from your diary?
I mean, we'll save the conclusions for the end, but that's not beyond the realms of possibility on this one.
Did you carry Albert off and have your way with him?
Where did that bit come from?
You're wearing a But It Was Aliens top which says #probe.
I am.
So it was the #probe.
I've already clarified I wouldn't like to go to an isolated area.
What if it's not isolated?
Was that your question?
That's the question.
So, by
Might
not
be.
isolated, do you mean civilization, like human civilization, or something else?
Something else. So what's isolation for him isn't isolation for you. You said you wouldn't like to be in an isolated area.
Me personally?
Yeah, maybe you're not. You like animals. What if you're
I like some animals.
one with
Let's not get carried
some
away.
animals?
I like dogs and orangutans.
Is this the type of place that,
I'm partial to cows.
where there would be orangutans?
No.
Dogs of some kind? Some nature?
Borneo and
Species.
Indonesia, I believe. Sorry?
So species? Wild dogs?
I don't know. Probably wolves.
So, we have canines.
Have you ever seen how big a wolf is? A wolf.
Have you seen how big you are?
Oh, well, I have actually. Yeah.
Well then. You fucking big bastard.
Hey, big boy. Right, before we get derailed.
I'm tired.
As Albert picked himself up and dusted himself down, Albert realised that it wasn't just one creature. Albert was surrounded by what Albert assumed were a family of 4 creatures, 2 adults and 2 children. The creatures were big, hairy, human-like figures. These were no bears. Yes, dear probers, this is the Saggy Saga... Saggy? The Saggy Sassy Saga Part 3, because we have Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Big Feet, Chewbaccas. 2 Bigfoot were very clearly male on account of their dangly bits, and 2 were female. Saggy dangly bits. Albert said, "What do you fellows want with me?" The Bigfoot appeared to chatter amongst themselves. Albert sized up the tallest and was confident that this creature was well upwards of 8 feet tall. Albert wasn't winning any fights here. Albert made a couple of efforts to bolt, but the moment Albert made a single fast movement, the Bigfoot were on to Albert, standing in Albert's path saying something that sounded like, "Soka, soka!" They were ready to run, and Albert knew that these things were physically superior. Albert therefore remained a captive of Bigfoot. Albert did have his gun on his person, but as Albert had not been harmed physically, Albert didn't want to open fire. Meanwhile, there was no guarantee that the next wouldn't be on Albert as soon as Albert nailed the first with his rifle. Albert would have to use his mind.
Is Albert intelligent?
He's not...
Dim.
Yeah, I'm not saying he was like Einstein, but he's savvy, I guess would be the word to describe him.
Okay. So Greybeard has included a family portrait of these 4 sassies, and
Saggies.
indeed one is quite saggy.
We'll post this on our Instagram at But It Was Aliens. It's just a family portrait for Mr. Moonwalkers being able to visualise today's events, I guess.
Have they got belts on?
That's irrelevant.
Why would they need belts?
That's I've redacted that information actually. Consider the belts redacted.
Utility belts on fucking Bigfoot.
They're
It's
handy.
the Batman of Bigfoot.
Bigfoot is handy. Moving on. Albert was held captive for 6 days. It turns out that the Bigfoot were pretty nice captors, and the little boy Bigfoot actually fed Albert sweet-tasting grass, though the Bigfoot also seemed to just watch Albert for entertainment. Albert kept himself going with food from his bag as he watched the Bigfoot carefully over the coming days. What Albert believed was the mother would spend her days gathering twigs and nuts and stacking leaves, making things comfortable for the family. The daddy Bigfoot spent the most time supervising Albert, but would occasionally venture out a little bit. Daddy would always seem to remain in earshot though, and was big and powerful. This Bigfoot would be quick to respond, so Albert knew that to escape, Albert would have to address Daddy Bigfoot in some way. Albert had on him some snuff, which was a tobacco product people snorted. The commoners smoked tobacco, whereas the elite snorted snuff. Over the days... It just sounds dirty, doesn't it? Over the days, the Bigfoot had been getting increasingly interested in Albert's snuff. Albert handed the Bigfoot his snuff box with intention of Daddy Bigfoot first having a little bit so that Albert could gradually give Bigfoot more, with Bigfoot basically poisoning itself eventually. But the Daddy Bigfoot took it and licked the whole box clean. The Bigfoot quickly became quite visibly ill. The Bigfoot then got up and grabbed and drunk Albert's coffee Albert had made on a fire he started, by this point cold, drinking the grounds and all, which probably made the Bigfoot feel even worse. The Bigfoot started squealing, then ran for the water. Now was Albert's chance. As the other Bigfoot, who had been quite friendly, panicked, Albert fired a shot nearby to scare them away from him, and Albert pegged it.
The moral of the story here is if you get captured, make sure you've got some snuff that they can snort.
Indeed. Well, gobble in this instance, but yes, give them your snuff. If you're ever in trouble, folks, give your snuff up. Let that snuff be gobbled. You know, as I researched and wrote this one, I had no idea how that sounded. The first time I said it out loud, I was like, oh no. oh dear.
I don't understand why the Bigfoot went for the coffee.
Closest thing to drink.
But
it probably was aware it was a fluid in there, had seen Albert making it, but didn't really understand what it was.
But this is the thing. Is it animalistic in nature?
Relatively, yes.
Or human in nature?
Well, I guess that's up for debate.
Okay.
I would argue more animalistic than human personally, but...
If animalistic rather than human, why did it not go for something that it knew would have been safe, so therefore gone straight for water?
Yeah.
If humanoid in nature, then why did it trust that the second thing that he had made wasn't going to have the same effect, and why didn't it go to the water?
So I would argue animalistic, and animals don't really think with human logic. They
think with animal brains, which
and they will go to the closest thing.
Oh, I don't know about
They will, I assure you.
Oh, you don't know about that.
Yeah, there's not human reasoning there. They will do stupid shit time and again. And forget themselves even when they know something and do stupid shit again.
Had some incidents lately?
Not lately, but having a dog, they, especially a Labrador, they go through periods of eating poop, for example. It doesn't do any good for them. It doesn't make them feel good, yet they continue to do it. So just remember that next time he licks you. No, you give him a kiss. Oh, you got strong breath there. Oh my god, pal. What have you been eating? Well, actually, I've been eating shit. Quite the meal, I'll have you know.
Well, you're still alive.
He's not so bad for dog poop at the moment, but he's getting interested in fox poop currently, so that's fun. Hasn't ever done the roly thing you see some dogs do, but he does try and eat it if you don't catch him and pull him away from it.
So,
well, I say that, you don't let him get to it, but...
There has been several times where my partner's mother's
eaten
dog
fox poo
has rolled in it, and fuck me, does that smell.
Yeah, it's a real problem. Like I said, we haven't had that yet, but I'm expecting it one day.
Especially with all the alpha foxes that keep coming in your garden.
The bloody giant bastard.
You're on their land.
So yeah, animalistic tendencies, they're not always intelligent. This thing felt bad, it needed liquid, that's all it was thinking, so it went for the closest liquid. Once that was gone, it went for the next closest liquid, which was the water nearby. I feel bad! Albert did indeed escape the Bigfoot. Albert eventually came to some loggers and just explained that he was lost. Albert. Now, I said this at the start. Albert was an honourable and trustworthy man. If someone was looking to make a dime from this, they'd be straight onto the press and writing a book, but Albert didn't share a peep. Albert didn't want to tarnish his reputation and didn't think people would believe it anyway, so Albert didn't say a freaking word about his experience for 24 years. By his 50s, Albert cared less if people thought Albert was crazy, and in 1957, Albert finally opened up to friends and family. Albert's account got out, and Albert did a few interviews. From the media, Albert's account was eventually published in a 1978 book called Sasquatch, The Apes Among Us. So now the word is obviously out.
So he must have been so far away from them that he was confident that they weren't following him.
He ran and ran and ran until he saw some loggers, yeah. And I'd imagine, based on his experience, they weren't approaching him during the day in his camp. They only came at night to scavenge. So chances are they weren't going anywhere near the loggers.
That's also true, but they must have been quite active during the day if he saw and witnessed everything that they were doing and they were keeping an eye on him.
But they were generally around their lair during the day also. The daddy only ventured out occasionally. Generally spent his time watching Albert and looking after the family and whatnot.
Okay.
Plus, they're a pretty friendly species, our lad. They've had Albert there for a good while and not murked him.
Yet.
Once Albert was in his 50s, one night he heard a tap at the door.
Soccer, soccer.
It was the son, who was now grown.
Got any coffee? They were fixated on it ever after that time, absolutely addicted, but couldn't get it.
The knock on the door wasn't like a pour or anything. It was a coffee pot.
He's like a crackhead holding this coffee pot. Having held the account deep within for 24 years, there is pretty much no opportunity to gather any evidence as to Albert's specific account, unfortunately. Albert's own view on the ordeal is that Albert was probably taken as a prospective mate for the young female. Albert doesn't say that anything sexual happened, though. Albert did debate taking the young female Bigfoot with him when he left, but Albert's conscience came through. Albert never changed his story through numerous interviews and accounts. Meanwhile, Albert was cross-examined by the police and agreed to sign a solemn declaration. That declaration stated that Albert's account was true under oath and virtue of the Canadian Evidence Act. Albert gave fairly detailed descriptions and lots of little add-ons to the account that would be hard to add if it were not true. Though I didn't add them because of how mad you got, Mr. Moonwalker, when we covered them Miami Mall New Year's Day alien invasion and that guy gave his story on why he was in Miami. The key takeaway is that Albert was consistent. More widely than Albert's account, Bigfoot sightings have been reported and handed down through indigenous cultures, let alone modern civilizations, but no body or skeleton of a Bigfoot has ever been recovered. We have consistency, but we do not have physical evidence further than the Patterson video, which we covered on a side probe over at But It Was Aliens, patreon.com. Consistent account, lack of physical.
Consistent bullshit. Absolutely
Absolutely full of shit. I'm not having it. I'm cracked. I'm done. Frick you.
I'm not saying that I was on board, but I was willing to hear this story out until the whole I think I was probably going to be a prospective mate for the female Bigfoot.
Yeah, and when he says he was debating taking her to do what? To be that mate?
Yeah. And what do you think the Bigfoot would have done? You're taking her away from her. You think that would have just...
Would have let that go?
Are you saying in the 6 days that you created such a bond with this female Bigfoot that you're now like Romeo and Juliet? Oh, that took me out.
Bearing in mind, he was scared. He didn't dare make a move for it for so long.
Yep.
He thinks he's going to take the daughter with him.
And again, like you say, and do what?
But then why did he sit on it for 24 years?
Maybe he was in financial ruin.
Wow.
You did say he was desperate, or he needed a break. What I was going to say, we have reports, or not necessarily reports, but we have indications of indigenous cultures and the Bigfoot.
Yep. Generations.
What if, because we know over time that humans were shorter
Yep.
and we've got taller
Yes.
as things have progressed. What if the original Bigfoot was just someone that was born ridiculously tall and hairy? Like the Big Show.
Big Show, Andre
Like
the
back
Giant
in-
style. Yeah.
I don't know, 1742 in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. He could have been like the tallest person that has ever been seen by anyone there. So if he just kind of wanders off to another town,
Living rough,
and
bit dirty, hair's overgrown.
he's got no, I was going to say motor function, but he would have motor function. Like, he's almost like a mute, can only speak in sounds.
Yeah.
That would terrify people.
And you
that
know
never
what?
Met him.
Some people grow a beard and it grows all nice and neat. Other people grow a beard, it's kind of standard. You get the odd person every now and then, when they grow a beard, it just goes whoosh. It's like an afro,
Scraggly as-
covers their
Yep.
entire face, so you can't see anything but the middle of the eyes.
Hagrid. What if they just saw Hagrid?
On a bad day.
You're a wizard, Harry. Soccer, soccer.
You couldn't maybe out some of that coffee, could you? You dirty bitch. Albert is pretty believable. So what if he was telling the truth, but Albert was slightly mistaken? If Albert was indeed kidnapped, but not by Bigfoot, what else could have been the culprit? We established at the start of the probe that the Toba Inlet is home to many grizzly bears, and it also houses many a black bear. Could a bear have kidnapped Albert, and then a lack of food and fluid left Albert a bit away with the fairies? It could even be that Albert tussled with a bear. Again, Albert was in an isolated area. Any number of wildlife factors such as fungi, as well as a lack of food, maybe combined with some booze, could have led to Albert having a scuffle with some wildlife and getting the details confused. Or a human could have jumped Albert for his supplies, or maybe because they wanted to find the lost gold mine. If not Bigfoot, what else do you think could have been to blame, Mr. Moonwalker?
You mentioned fungi. What if his food was being taken by little bear cubs and he took some mushrooms or
Yeah,
ate something that made him hallucinate?
something
And-
in his snuff.
If you happen to walk up to him in this scenario, you would have seen him in his underwear just talking to bears like they were like normal people, and the bears are so confused by the situation and behaviour that they haven't attacked him. They're just going on
They're sat there looking at him like, hey,
Yeah.
boo-boo, what do you think of this guy?
or they're just doing what they're normally doing, and he's just around them of his tits
I mean, I don't think...
on snuff and fungus.
I've never taken any such substance, but there are substances out there that do make you just hallucinate and shit turns into shit and whatnot. Yeah, who knows?
I have known some people over the years that have taken some of this.
Yeah, so have I.
And they were telling me once how they were walking through town one day, and it was the summer, but it was snowing. Mm-hmm. And they looked, and people's heads were turning into animal heads. Like,
Yep. We
That's
both
trippy.
have a friend who did some shit around 18 years of age and 20 years later is still having flashbacks every now and then.
God damn.
Yeah, you got to be careful when you touch that shit. You can be looking at long-term effects. Anyway, we have a 3-minute 56-second YouTube Squatch Stories summary of this incident, which I'm going to show Mr. Moonwalker so that we can hear the voice of Albert. If you'd like to check this out, Mr. Moonwalker.
Is this, before I click it, where the family of Saggy Sassies came from?
To be honest, I researched this one more than a year ago. I don't actually remember.
Okay.
I put this one back. We were due to record it a little while ago, but not just one, but 2 other podcasts in a similar area to ours decided to cover it. And so I wanted to put it back so that it's fresh, or theirs wasn't fresh in my mind.
Albert Ostman lived fairly close
To me.
I got to know
Did
him
he?
very well. I've interviewed him numerous times.
John Green is a retired Canadian journalist and a leading researcher into the Bigfoot phenomenon. He is a graduate of both the University of British Columbia and Columbia University, and has a database of more than 3,000 sighting and track reports, earning him the nickname Mr. Sasquatch.
Should have called him Biggie.
While researching his book Sasquatch, The Apes Among Us,
Saggy John.
he interviewed Canadian outdoorsman Albert Ostman, recording his detailed and strange account. Ostman claimed he was kidnapped and held captive by a family of Sasquatch in 1924, while he was prospecting in British Columbia, Canada.
What?
This is the actual audio recording of Ostman's account made in 1966.
Should have just cut straight to this bit, shouldn't we?
On prospecting trip. I was in, I think it was about 6 or 7 days. Then I was camping at the place there.
There you have it.
Began to bother me at night there. I thought first there would be porcupines or probably bear or something. But evidently it was something else. And that went on for about 3-4 nights.
Evidently, it was something else.
I was thinking, what if these are just normal people in bear costumes or
And carried away.
It explained the belt.
He carried me for, I don't know, probably 3-4 hours. Then I was let down in the valley, where, of course, it was dark, you know.
what if more than one of them was carrying him?
I heard a lot of chatter around.
Did you?
A little after 4 o'clock in the morning when he let me down.
His accent is so hard to place.
Carried him in a sleeping bag.
Cano?
Which also contained his supplies and his rifle. Ostman didn't feel threatened by the strange creatures, but he also didn't feel free to leave, so he settled in and made his own camp.
Got himself
When
cozy.
it got lighter, I noticed these people around me, 4 of them, 2 big ones and 2 small ones, but they were all covered with hair and no clothes.
So hairy
They
people.
were bothering me. Evidently they had some reason why they wanted me there. I had enough wood gathered up so I cooked coffee. And I guess the aroma from that brought him near, and he was sitting about 10 feet away from me when I was drinking my coffee. And then I opened a box of snuff, you see. And when I opened that and took a pinch, you know, he reached out for it, you know. And he emptied it right in his mouth. And he swallowed it. And that didn't feel very good, you know. Tastes very good, I guess. So, and then he had to have something to drink, I guess. So he grabbed that and he drank the coffee can, ground and all.
There we have it.
As a result of the snuff and the coffee, the beast ran off, likely looking for water.
I'm starting to think the accent is fake.
His escape.
It's not a story that anybody would be inclined to believe today.
No.
Descriptions that he gave of these individuals have been consistently supported throughout the years by subsequent observations.
Indeed.
Right. I love the fact that whenever you get a sighting like this and the professional goes, it's smack bang in line with everything that we've heard before from people that have been abducted or something like that. They were like, right, the description matches, the description matches, the description matches. I just copied what this person said. They just copied what that person said, who just copied what that person said, and just put a tiny little tweak on it so it's not the same. It's like when people copy other people's homework, but they go, you need to just change a few things so that the teacher doesn't think we've just copied each other. So they just change their name, and then you get pulled up for copying homework when you never copied it. Pricks.
Before we summarise, let's just take a look at skepticism and skepticism. American paranormal investigator, skeptic and non-former MIB, which if you ask me makes him unqualified, Joe Nickell, analysed this case in 2007. Joe, who is Senior Research Fellow for the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry and at time of recording in 2024 is about 80 years of age, determined that Albert's tale was a tale from the imagination, not recollection. These skeptical folks promote proper investigation using science, and I guess there wasn't much science to this case. I suppose you could make the suggestion that Albert was an older gentleman in a physical job who may have been looking for a new income rather than the hard physical labour Albert had engaged in most of his life. It's been reported that Albert was a big drinker who spent a lot of money in saloons, though I couldn't verify that. I couldn't find any accounts of Albert making any meaningful financial gain from this account, but it is possible that this was what Albert thought may happen. Or Albert could have been a member of a liars club. Woohoo! With regards to the account itself, it's unlikely after 6 days with barely any food that Albert would have been doing particularly well. He'd have been malnourished and basically murked. Food sources to maintain 4 large grey apes would also have been extremely limited in this area, as Nickell concluded. It's unlikely, but isn't that what makes it paranormal?
No. I still can't get over I was thinking of taking her back with me.
Maybe he was lonely.
Also, in the video, he mentions what happened, but it's also not a lot that happened.
Yep.
It's a lot, but not a lot.
Sat there doing nothing really, wasn't he?
Yeah, you've got to remember 4 key details.
Yeah,
and that's it.
It's when you unpick it, there's it's less convincing than an already barely convincing. Well, let's just summarise, shall we? In summary, we've covered the case of Albert Ostman, a gentleman who in 1924, on a holiday to the Toba Inlet of British Columbia, had the closest ever encounter with Bigfoot. Albert was kidnapped whilst in a sleeping bag and held captive by a Bigfoot family of 4 for 6 days. Albert gradually built a bit of a relationship with the Bigfoot family and gave the Bigfoot some snuff, which you're supposed to sniff, but the Bigfoot ate, which made Daddy Bigfoot ill and enabled Albert to escape. Albert didn't tell a soul for 24 years, but in his 50s, Albert told those close to him and did a few interviews. We wondered whether Albert could have been malnourished and dehydrated on his holiday and hallucinated a bit after an encounter with a bear, or whether Albert just flat out lied. Or whether he's off his face on something else. Are you ready to decide on a truth behind this encounter, Mr. Walker of Moons?
Is snuff original cocaine?
No.
So
it's similar to like chewing tobacco, but you snort it.
Okay, you're meant to snort it.
Yeah.
He says in the video that he put it in his mouth.
The Bigfoot put it in his mouth.
No. Albert said he put it in his mouth. He said he took a little
hold
bit.
on. Do you
and he
snort
put it in his mouth. So I was going to say, did he rub it on his gums? Like how some people tend to rub little bits of cocaine on their gums?
You did snort it. No, you definitely did. I'm losing trail of my thoughts here. You did snort snuff.
Okay. So the video's inaccurate.
Well, not necessarily. He might have tried to show the Bigfoot that, look, do this and then snort it. Get a little taste and stick it in your nose.
Should have done a little line.
Then get it on 2 fingers.
And then snorted it. Much like...
To be honest, I think that's a very strange detail to get fixated on in the grand scheme of things.
So the moment you said snuff, and I was like, yeah, he didn't do that in the video. So what are you asking me?
Are you saying that it was Biggie?
There's a big load of bollocks.
Yeah, I don't know if you really need to give much more than that. We've been quite clear, sadly. This encounter, it's the closest interaction, allegedly, anyone has ever had with Sasquatch. Oh, Sassy.
Saggy.
Like you, I sadly could not bring myself to believe Albert. I don't think Albert believes either. I mean, memories aren't reliable, and over time memories actually change. And so the fact that Albert has stayed so very consistent is an alarm bell to me. It's too perfect. I think Albert is probably a gentleman getting older, having a bit of a giggle. We've said before, though, of all the paranormal stories out there, an undiscovered ape is among the more believable. Albert wasn't kidnapped by Bigfoot, but you bet your butt a man named Tim Peeler did once punch Bigfoot. Go on, get! Do you have any final thoughts, Mr. Moonwalker?
No, I don't.
Then, sir, you can go on, get! That is a wrap for today. Thank you for listening to But It Was Aliens! If you have a bit of disposable income or want to support us to keep on probing, you can make us all warm and fuzzy in our tum-tums by heading over to patreon.com/butitwasaliens. If you sign up to become a patron of But It Was Aliens for less than the cost of a coffee each month, you will gain access to our bonus episodes, Side Probes, where we explore the craziest paranormal mysteries and conspiracies out there. You can share episode suggestions with us on the Twitter at But It Was Aliens. You could also say hello on Facebook.
Hi. Hiya. You alright?
We're connected to But It Was Aliens is a secretly public private group called Extraterrestrial Towers. Being a member of Extraterrestrial Towers grants you protection from the aliens when they invade. There are some rumours going around that you won't be granted protection at all and that actually you are being sacrificed for probing in order to keep our butts slab free, but they are just that, rumours, and any abductions you may suffer after joining Extraterrestrial Towers are purely coincidental.
Purely.
That is it for this episode, so until next time, can you dreadlock a Bigfoot?
Yes.
The truth is up there. #proba. Just got the mental image. Buffalo Bigfoot.